Welcome to the Future of Leadership. I'm your host, Zoë Routh, leadership futurist, author, and adventure seeker. Here we like to ask the big questions of what if and figure out what we need now for what's next. Together we will work through leadership and life transitions with grace. Now, on with the show. Hey there, it's Zoe, and my question for you this week is, how are you handling the various midlife, late career transitions? Let's find out. Well, on Planet Zoe this week, the friendship quest continues. I am still getting out there, putting my hand in front of people, my face in front of people and saying, hello, I'm new to Newy. I'm Zoe. Would you like to be my friend? I don't add that last part, but that's what it feels like. Just this morning, I went to my second round of granny grommets at the beach and had an absolute ball throwing myself into the waves on my boogie board. It's been about 2 years since I've been on my board, and it was wonderful. So, this is a process that can't be rushed. It'll take months probably before I get a lunch invitation or before I feel comfortable issuing a coffee or lunch invitation, but I will definitely report on it when I get past the acquaintance stage into the friendship zone. Also on Planet Zoe, we are modifying our Australian alpine walking track plan. We did, my friend Mel and I did have a massive plan to do 19 days on the track, but guess what? Injury. Yes, Mel's injury of her plantar fasciitis and Achilles is problematic. My Achilles is almost fixed and hers has flared up. This is the challenge of becoming an older hiker. So we are doing a shorter version of that. But the good news is we're still getting out there and it will be fun. So that's coming up in April, just before Easter. The other big news is that since I finished the launch of Olympus Dawn, I have been exploding with creativity. And this one has been directed to the Chrysalis program. The tentative title for the official program, official quotation marks, is called The Next Becoming Through the Midlife Chrysalis. And it will be a combination of coaching and a retreat, which will happen later on in the year. But there will be a preview free workshop coming up soon, and I'll let you know about that at the end of the show today. In the meantime, my conversations with people and with my clients and with leaders is that leaders are exhausted and burnt out. They're just kind of at the end of their tether. This seems to be an ongoing theme through COVID and beyond. And especially older leaders are just kind of like, over it. Many have lost parents, siblings, and friends. I haven't lost a parent or a sibling. I have lost a few friends over the last couple of years, and it really does hit hard. It all feels all too soon. They were all in their 50s except for Leith, a Leith bully who was, I think, in her early 70s. Even so, she was taken all too soon. And it kind of makes you think about mortality, longevity, and life in general. And it is disturbing. The other stuff that's going on for people is many have given up work or have been made redundant. Through all of these types of transitions, there's a need for connection, for clarity, and a pathway. How do we get through this stuff is the big question I've been asking for myself as I've been through a major physical transition from one city to the next and a different stage of my life and business as well. Well, that's what I've been working on, and that's what I've been bursting with creativity about. I have new models, I have new questions, I have new tools to share with you. So transitions are loss before gain. I think we all kind of know that. And in the transition phase, we need to honor the grieving process. So transitions are loss before gain, and we need to honor the grieving process before we get excited about the new stuff. Anticipate retirement or graduation or some other major lifestyle, life something milestone. Doesn't make them easier though. We can still grieve through that process. So anticipated is the first one. Second one is unanticipated. We didn't expect it. Could be illness, injury, or a windfall. The third one is what I'm calling a fizzer, or what Nancy calls a non-event. This is where we had hoped and planned for a particular transition, such as becoming a parent, And it didn't happen. So there's a huge feeling of being let down with that one. And the fourth one is sleepers. And these are transitions that kind of creep up on you, such as falling out of love or falling in love. So 4 types of transitions, each with its own bag of excitement and despair, I would say, or disgruntlement or disequilibrium. There are 3 spheres of transitions. The first one is personal. Moving house is one of them. It's the one I've been going through. Moving house, cities, or countries, that is quite a massive transition. There's the empty nest transition that some of my listeners are heading towards or in at the moment. There's divorce, there's marriage, there's death of a loved one, there's spiritual connection or desire for more spiritual connection, there's a desire for clarifying legacy, and there's changing interests. All of a sudden you find yourself no longer interested in work, maybe you're more interested in puzzles. That's an example. So there's these personal transitions. The second sphere is physical. And these could be hormone changes such as menopause and andropause. And we're going to dig into that just a little bit more in just a moment. And along with the physical, we might have health, mobility, or cognitive decline. Change in sensuality and sex drive. Loss of libido seems to be a problem in later years. So let's touch on menopause/andropause. Now, menopause for women is a defined biological milestone or event. It's when the body stops producing estrogen, which causes all sorts of chaos in a woman's life. Because estrogen is essential for lots of things, not least of which is metabolizing cortisol, helping your nails and hair and skin be elastic. A whole bunch of things are reliant on temperature regulation is another one. And without this, we have all the fantastic side effects of going through perimenopause and into menopause when you no longer have a period. These include a long laundry list of woes, which are weight gain, brain fog, vaginal dryness. What else have we got on here? Hot flushes. Oh yeah, that's fun times. Night sweats, libido loss, skin elasticity. Yeah. And it goes on and on. There's plenty. And it's not uniform or across all women. Like all my friends I've talked to, we all have different symptoms, different degrees of problems, and it's all pretty problematic. Some people cruise through it. Good for you if that's you. And many of us have a big, massive struggle through it. I'm hoping to get my friend Mel Kettle back on the show to talk about this because she is a deep dive expert on the subject and we can dig into what this means for work and life, etc. Lesser known hormonal change is for men, and it's called andropause. I did a little research before jumping on this recording to find out a little bit more about it. So unlike the definitive physical milestone event for women, andropause is kind of like a gradual loss of testosterone, and it's not universal. From about the ages of 30 to 40, testosterone starts to decline by about 1% per year. And for men, it affects muscle mass, fat distribution, energy, mood, libido, bone density, motivation, and desire. Now, the symptoms are lower libido, perhaps erectile changes, reduced morning erections, sad, fatigue, weight gain, especially around the abdomen, loss of muscle, brain fog, irritability, and poor sleep. Sounds a little bit like menopause there. The challenge for andropause is that it often overlaps with lifestyle challenges such as stress, burnout, poor sleep, which also leads to weight gain, and midlife identity shift. Didn't say midlife crisis, but sometimes that all gets bundled up into one. So the men might be struggling alongside the women, but it's less significant or salient or visible or talked about, I would say. The treatment for both men and women is pretty similar. Weight training, if you're overweight, to lose weight. Optimize your sleep health, reduce alcohol, manage your stress, and maybe, if you're a man, consider testosterone replacement therapy, though it's not a simple thing. And for women, it's hormone replacement therapy as well.
And not everybody can do that. I tried it and I had some very bad side effects. So it wasn't for me. So I don't do HRT. I do my menopause management all through the hard yakker, managing my diet. So that means an increase in protein, really being careful with fat intake, and especially with saturated fat, because estrogen is actually essential for metabolizing and processing cholesterol. So in my family, we already have high cholesterol, and with no estrogen, it gets worse. So I have to really scrutinize everything that has saturated fat and keep that low, low, low to keep my cholesterol from skyrocketing, leading to risk of heart attack and stroke. Yeah, I'm at that age group where we talk about heart attack and stroke. Fun. What else do I'm doing? Lifting heavy weights, doing cardio to help keep back the brain fog, and if you can do it, hormone replacement therapy. Phew, that was all the physical changes, the physical transitions that we might be experiencing in later years. There's also professional transitions, and these might be losing your job, closing a business, starting a business, retiring, or slow tiring. I love that. I don't know if it's just me who made that up, but it makes sense to me. So not just cutting off work, but just slowing down, doing different things. A change of career direction, and anything else professional. So you might be stepping in, you might be stepping back, you might be stepping aside, something we talked about with Digby a week before last. So all these transitions, they all have an emotional impact, and there's a spectrum of how we might respond to these particular transitions. So make a note, see if you fit in any of these stages. You might exist primarily in one or across a number of them. The first one is exhausted. And that's honestly a lot of leaders who are in their later career can feel exhausted just by the grind, by the rinse and repeat, by the endless pressure. It seems relentless, and that can be exhausting and just want a break. In fact, I know plenty of people, at least two people, who've said, I just want to quit my job and become a librarian. It's like no responsibility. Feels, or so they think, right? So nobody's actually worked in the library can tell me that there's no responsibility, but they fantasize about this life where you're doing stuff that you enjoy, but without the pressure of performance. And for some of them, that equated into what they visualized being a librarian was about. So exhausted is one of the emotional responses that we can have to these transitions. The next one is feeling numb. And this might be feeling depressed, inflexible, stuck, just kind of dull. Next one has a little bit more energy. So this is kind of a spectrum of energy response to the emotional impact of transitions. Next one might be agitated. And in agitation, you might feel angry. You might feel anxious. You might have a fear of death, just feeling really unsettled and disturbed, which is slightly different to the next stage, which is feeling restless. And in your restlessness, you might feel lonely. You might be seeking something, a new direction, a new pathway, a new solution, new connections, novelty, something. You have this sense of longing for something different. It's a craving, and maybe you're just bored. And at the other end of the spectrum, from exhausted and numb, we have energized, and you're excited for the new. I think I've been between restless and energized for some time, and I'm moving more towards energized, which is great. Now that we're settled in our new place in Newcastle, not Newcastle. I'm feeling more energized, which is great. Here's the thing about transitions, though. They unsettle identity, and yet they also invite becoming. There's different types of chrysalis archetypes that we can experience as we go through this transition phase. So transition is really this chrysalis where things dissolve and go into muck, and you need to find your way through. And there's different ways of experiencing all of that. And in the workshop, we'll unpack all of the archetypes. There's 7 of them. So in midlife, why is identity such a big thing, and why is becoming central to that? Is because identity in midlife often fractures because of role changes. Maybe you're a CEO who's moving to becoming more of an advisor instead of central to command. Or maybe as a parent, you're becoming an empty nester and you're no longer primary caregiver. or provider. And that loss of that role, that shift in identity and performance can be quite challenging. The body changes, we just spoke about that. You might have a status shift. And as we move to being from, like, let's say as a CEO to being an advisor, our status shifts a little bit, and that can be destabilizing, and we might want to cling on to that. We might become less central and less visible. The other thing too is if we retire, we can either feel like or be seen as no longer contributing, so being less of a contributor and more of a consumer. And I know that this is one of the prejudices or beliefs I have sitting in my whole ethos about retirement per se, is that these people are no longer contributing, they're just consuming. And I know that this is, I just, pause and hold my breath on that. I'm like, is that actually true? It's probably not, but it sits there as something that's a gristle in my thinking around retirement or later stage of life. So this causes an need for identity recalibration. And the big question, before we get to the big question, is that often identity shifts also happen because our ambition starts to recalibrate as well. We are no longer hustling or fighting forward or struggling or, striving, all that good stuff that you need when you're in your 30s. And Digby, Scott and I talked a little bit about that kind of energy of just all that hustle kind of drops a little bit. So the big question then is, if I am no longer who I was, who am I now, and who am I becoming? So in my excitement for my program, I do have a 5-step process for moving through this transition. And the first one is to release the performer. The second one is to claim mature authority. The third one is to deepen moral courage. Fourth is to shift from achievement to stewardship. And fifth is to design your elder identity. And in the recording this week, we're going to go through step 1, which is release the performer. All right, so in releasing the performer, and this is a big piece of the challenge. Like, I say it like it's just an easy step, but it's actually quite hard. I know this because I'm shaking myself through this as well. So before we shape identity, we need to release the old one. And this is the way that we honor transition and grief. So here are 7 questions to help us move through step 1 of release the performer. And I'm going to use myself as a little case study to give you an example of how you might tackle these questions yourself. And I will summarize the 7 questions in the show notes. So if you're trying to drive and you want to remember the questions, don't worry, they're going to be in the show notes. Number 1, what roles have defined me for the last 20 years? Or if you've been working for longer than that, several decades. For me, I have been definitely a goal getter. I put go getter, but I think it's also goal getter. Like, pick a goal, go for it. Run a marathon, go and do it. Then do another one, do 6. In fact, train for 7. And it was cancer that interrupted number 6, which led me to run the last one, which was training for 7, but actually only running 6. So goal getter for me. Adventurer is another one. I like to throw myself in. I'm a hard worker. And a mentor once described me as titanium, as in really strong, determined, resilient, tough. So those are the roles, characteristics, I guess, that have defined me over the last couple decades. Which of these are ending, shrinking, or changing? Wow. When you think about that, it's like, okay, are any of them? For me, I guess goal getter is shrinking. It's because I no longer want to die on the altar of outcomes. I think that's pretty big for me, actually. Setting goals and achieving them is characteristic of the achiever stage of leadership maturity, and I burnt out from that quite a number of years ago. And yet it's remained part of my DNA, my approach to business, my approach to everything, really. So that's shifting or easing off a little bit for me. Thank goodness. But it doesn't mean that I give up ambition completely. It's a different kind of ambition. It's not goal getting for the point of proof. We'll come to that in a minute. So number 3 is, what part of my former identity am I clinging to? I think hard worker is one of them. I've always been a hard worker. It's been an important part of being a successful, contributing, there's that word again, human, professional human. So yeah, I'm clinging to that. I'm holding it lightly now as I think about it though. What does not working hard look like and feel like when I am not working hard? Don't know. That's part of the whole Chrysalis engagement, is like, what is coming to new into being? Number 4, where am I still performing as a younger version of myself? Oh, that's easy. I keep going to the gym and doing activities as if I was still 30. And that kind of showed up for me today too at the beach when I was out with the granny grommets on my boogie board, and I've got my fins on and I'm hammering through the waves out the back. And after 5 waves, I was done. I was so tired. I'm like, I don't remember it being this tiring. That's because you're not 30 anymore, girlfriend. And definitely I throw myself into the gym classes along with people who are at least 15 years younger than me and try and keep up. Yeah. Yep, that's my midlife crisis piece, I think. What part of my identity, this is number 5, what part of my identity was built on proving myself? There we go, it's a huge one. I think most of my major achievements were saturated with this feeling or desire to prove myself. One of the main ones was proving that I could run a successful business. That was really part of my ego identity for a long, long, long time. Writing leadership books, proving that I could do it and that I could be a successful author was definitely, there's the proving thing in there. And even when I started writing fiction 4 years ago, proving that to myself and to others that I could write fictional books as well. Is it still alive for me, this need to prove myself? Yeah, I think it is, in ways that are uncomfortable and not helpful. So it'd be really great to just let go of that. I think for me, proving myself is being replaced with wanting fun and being in service. I think that's why I've come back to the podcast, is I didn't need to prove anything. I mean, after 9 years and 400 plus episodes, I can do the damn thing. Do I need to prove anything with it? Not really. What I'm really wanting to do with it is to enjoy it and to have it be valuable for you, the person listening at the other end of this, and to create a conversation around the things that matter in midlife and later career, which is you listening. All right, number 6. What would I stop doing if I no longer needed validation? Yep, that's the proving self correlative. I can't even say that word. The question that's related to proving yourself. For me, I guess I'd drop comparisonitis, which is this kind of like this weed in my life that it keeps propping up. And along with that is like worrying about things like LinkedIn followers and subscribers, these metrics that we have for, am I relevant? Do people like me? Am I growing? All this stuff, the proving stuff, I don't know. It's like a security blanket that means absolutely zilch. So I would stop doing that. And I think the metaphor of weeding the garden is the thing. So whenever it pops up, it's like pluck that weed, put it on the compost heap, and let it change into something else. And the last question is, where must I release control to become a guide instead of a rival? I think this is such an important question for people who are in executive leadership positions. And you might feel in later career, how do I let go of this thing because I'm feeling so relevant? And Digby and I talked about that as well, as the need to build leaders. And how do you do that if you're used to controlling, directing, etc.? I don't have that issue because I work on my own. And so, phew, I get to escape that challenging one. But I know it's a really tough one. And, to be a guide instead of a rival, I think is important. You don't want to be the old dog squashing the new dog on the scene, right? Even though that's sometimes what we default to. And it's all about insecurity. So there's a lot of healing work that we must go through all of that. All right, so that's 7 questions in step 1 of release the performer out of the 5 steps of how to develop your identity through the Chrysalis process. All right, and I'll be going through the 5 steps of identity when I run the actual program. So I have some resources for you as I wrap up this episode. The 7 questions, as I mentioned, for releasing your past identity will be in the show notes, so you can review them at your leisure. Leisure or leisure? I don't even know which one's Australian. I think leisure might be Australian. Anyway, I say leisure. It sounds better in my mouth. The second one is point you towards Chip Conley and the Modern Elder Academy. This has such a wealth of information, free ebooks, free guides on lots of the topics that I'm covering in this show. And they have all these fantastic retreats over in the US and online workshops and so on. So that's pretty huge, pretty good resource there. And Chip has a number of different books out as well. And he also has a podcast called The Midlife Chrysalis, which when I saw was both annoying and uplifting. Annoying because I'm like, oh my God, I've just been talking about Chrysalis. I think it's my thing. Well, it's just archetypal. This is what ChatGPT told me. He said, take a breath. The chrysalis as a metaphor for midlife is an archetypal thing. It's, no one kind of copyrights that. I'm like, okay. Anyway, his podcast is called Midlife Chrysalis, and it's really good. It's really interesting to listen to. The third resource is a book to recommend. It's by Cassidy Krug. She is an ex-Olympic diver, and it's called Resurface, a guide to navigating life's biggest transitions. And it's pretty good. I skimmed the stories, to be honest, and went straight to the resources or exercises that they have at the end of each chapter, and those were really useful. So how to think about the different aspects of your transition. So that's a book, Resurface, a guide to navigating life's biggest transitions by Cassidy Krug. And the fourth resource is coming up next week on Thursday, the 12th of March, 10 a.m. Australian time. I'm going to run a free online workshop called Midlife and Late Career Transitions. And in that, I'll touch on some of the things we talked about today and go deeper on the transition self-assessment worksheet. We'll do an attachment audit. So what are you hanging on to? I've just shared some of the things I've been hanging on to. Map where you are on the becoming spectrum. A deep dive into your chrysalis archetype. There are 7 of them, and what specific steps you need to help move through and get some momentum through the chrysalis. And I'll show you the map from crisis through chrysalis to calling in later life. And there'll also be a short preview of the next becoming through the midlife chrysalis, the retreat that I'm hoping to run at the end of this year. Okay, that's happening next week, Thursday, the 12th of March at 10 a.m. There will be a link to register in the show notes. Yes, I will record it. Yes, you will have access to the recording for a week or so. Actually, probably 2 weeks because the following week I'm away for work in Canberra. Yeah, that's it. Those are the 4 resources. That's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I would love to hear your comments of the kinds of transitions that you are moving through, what the emotional journey is like for you, what epiphanies you've had, anything like that. Drop me an email, zoe@zoerouth.com, or a note on LinkedIn, or a text message, whatever works for you. And I have an update to my slogan as I worked through all the content for this particular program. And it is, I have like this mental block when I'm about to say the whole thing. It's live with grace, lead in service, and love deeply. There you go. This is all about flourishing in later life. I hope you like it. In the meantime, live well, lead well. See you next week.